feel like Miami.
Miami, 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 Miami,
Miami.
Miami, 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 Miami.
It feel like Miami.
Welcome to the Heat Podcast. I'm your host, Giancarlo Navas, and with me today, it's been a while since he's been on the program. Old friend of the show, ESPN's own George Sedano. George, what a wonderful Thursday afternoon this is. Thanks for coming on.
Good to have. Thank you to have. Let me start this again. Good to be here again. Sorry, it's been a long day already, and it's on my off day, so I'm like off at the moment already. I came to match your glasses intensity today.
Thank you. Yeah.
I'm an old man now, so I need readers. So I figured if we're going to get into some in-depth stuff, I may need to look some stuff up while we're talking. So I said, all right, let me get the glasses because that's where I'm at. I literally can't read my phone anymore most days because I'm going blind. It's awful.
Do you have the big text set on your phone? Do you have like?
No, I do refuse.
You're not there
yet.
You're not there
I
yet.
refuse. I will not do that.
Okay.
I feel like I need to hit 60 before I try something like that. So before that, I'll just go with these.
Don't let anybody judge you for quality of life changes, George.
Yeah, no, but I also feel like I can go stylish here, like go different colors. I've got green ones. I've got blue ones. I don't have red ones. I should find red ones though, too.
Glasses are in now. Glasses are in. People like glasses. So,
yeah.
And we're gonna take a good look at this series. But first, George, as soon as you kind of hopped on the call, NBA news broke. Mike Budenholzer has been let go as Milwaukee Bucks head coach. Obviously, a lot of weird stuff surrounding that series, not the least of which Mike's brother passed away, I think sometime during the series or right before. I don't know exactly, but and his two-time MVP and Defensive Player of the Year went down in Game 1 and only played basically like 2 games and a quarter. My initial reaction was, man, I thought, kind of given the circumstances, his championship pedigree, the success they've had, I would have thought that bought him at least another go, kind of given, but they are kind of on the clock a little bit. Middleton is going to be owed some money if he opts in or out. Drew Holiday, kind of uncertainty with him going forward, and times, you're always ticking with the superstar. George, what was your reaction to that? It was kind of shocking.
Yeah, look, I guess it is and it isn't. Obviously, you mentioned that the tragedy and losing a sibling, losing a loved one in general is awful. I think we've all been through it in some way, shape, or form, and nothing but love towards his family in this trying situation, just dealing with that, right? And then you have the other aspects of life kind of get involved here too. You never want to see anyone lose their job. I too probably was leaning towards the same direction you were, which is, he's probably going to get one more crack at it, right? But remember, in the immediacy of it, I think a lot of us, prior to knowing what had transpired with his brother, sadly, I think a lot of us were like, uh-oh, he may be on the ropes here, right? You know what I mean? Like, as far as his job status is concerned. So I guess when you look at it that way, it's why I say it's also not that surprising. And it's been a constant theme where his star, while not necessarily running him under the bus entirely, has been asked about guarding certain people during a series, particularly Jimmy Butler, now twice, right?
Yeah.
And, him saying, yeah, that's the coach's decision. I'd like to do more of it. So kind of removing himself from that equation and in essence saying, hey, that's above my pay grade, right? You need to ask the guy that makes those decisions. I don't think that stuff helps. I don't think these things are done in a vacuum, right? Particularly when it comes to professional sports. I think a lot of people are consulted, whether they'll admit it or not. And I don't mean just players, right? I think, that's a particular team that has a new group or partners, I guess, from an ownership standpoint, because there are still some of the same people there from the previous ownership group. But yeah, I think that there's probably a lot of people consulted on making a move of this magnitude. So I guess I'm surprised a little bit, but if I really think about it, just based on the way we felt in the immediacy of it, I guess not that surprised.
Yeah, and the thing with when Giannis said some of that stuff that you had mentioned, I think a lot of us on Twitter were like, oh, well, that kind of seems like the nail in the coffin, which is, kind of shocking because I'm assuming that he knew everything that was going on. So the situation must have gotten to a point that, unfortunately it got there. But, whenever there's a firing of a coach, you have to find a better, more qualified one. And Nick Nurse available, my boy, that one makes sense.
Yeah, that's immediately what I thought of as the series ended. Someone asked me, well, if they fire Bud, what would they do? And I said, Nick Nurse to me makes all the sense in the world for sure.
Absolutely. So that we'll look out for that as
well. And especially when Ime Udoka took the Houston job.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, they were the big guys available.
Right. And because Nick has a relationship, well, granted, it was more with Daryl when he was running that organization because, he won 2 G League championships with the Rio Grande Valley Vipers, who are the Rockets G League team. So there was that familiarity with the group, although Rafael was part of that group as well, if I recall correctly. And maybe I'm missing the timeline or messing the timeline up a little bit, but I feel like there was some sort of connection there. But once Udoka took that job, then to me, it makes a lot of sense that the next big available opening would go to Nurse, or he would be the prime candidate for it.
George, I have a bit of a wild card, and we'll transition after this for who could have that job. I actually think Frank Vogel would be great for that job.
That's not terrible. I think, look, I like Frank a lot. Okay. And when he was the coach of the Lakers, he and I developed a very good relationship. And I feel like, and I said this on my radio show in LA, I feel like he got scapegoated a little bit.
Absolutely.
And I don't think, look, like if you're telling me right now that this is the team that Frank Vogel would have coached, and I like Darvin Ham too, so don't get this twisted. Yeah. It's not, but if you're telling me that this version of the Lakers is what Frank Vogel would have, I feel like the Lakers would still be in a great place. If anything, I would feel a little more confident only because they'd have an experienced coach at the helm and not a rookie coach, which, by the way, you have to expect at some point or another he's going to make a rookie coach mistake because he made a couple of them during the regular season, and that would only be natural. That's not a knock on Darvin Ham because I do think that he's had a great career as an assistant. He's obviously won a championship both as an assistant and a player with the Detroit Pistons, and I think there's a respect level there from the players because he's been in that grind that they've been through. But there is something to be said about experience, especially this time of season.
Yeah, he just came to mind because, they obviously have really the skeleton of what could be a great defense. And,
what other openings do we have? Like off the top, let's go through this real quick because I think Frank will be a candidate for a lot of them if I had to guess. Like what else do we have available?
Did Toronto fill the vacancy yet? I don't think so, right?
They have not.
Have not. That job's available. Are you asking what jobs are available or what?
Yeah, what jobs are available? Toronto, now Milwaukee.
I wouldn't be surprised, George, if Boston becomes available. I think Missoula looks.
They just signed him to an extension.
I don't know. Have you been? He looks a little bit rattled, and
yeah, but they're still good. Like
they are, but I mean, I maybe I'm overreacting.
I think they're still probably going to get to the finals.
Maybe. I mean.
Probably.
It kind of depends on Joel's
listen, I don't think anything is a given. Yeah. You know what I mean? But I think that if you're handicapping it, they're probably the team that most people would say would get there right now out of the teams that are left.
I'm trying to think. I don't think, George, there came a period in like the 2010s where there was really a carousel of coaches. I think we've gone to a point that firing of coaches has really slowed down. I think teams kind of stick with their guys a little longer than before because before it used to be like the NFL. You get like 10 openings.
Oh my God. Yeah. It was like 7 or 8 openings every year. So I'm looking at it right now. So let me see.
So Houston's filled.
Chicago's now. Cleveland said JB's their guy. Detroit. Yeah. Did they hire somebody?
I don't think so because that was another thing that
Dwayne Casey went to the front office, right? So I'm pretty sure Detroit is open. Let me see.
I like that job for Frank too.
Yeah. Although
I like
I like that job for anybody because I think they're going to be good for a long time eventually.
I think that's a wait and see where their draft pick ends up.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. Washington. Right?
Yeah, Washington is, I think, not. Well, no, Tommy Shepard is out.
Tommy Shepard, the GM, was let go. But that means a new GM could bring in a new coach.
Yeah,
that's why I say that. Rockets was filled. And then what's on shaky ground? let's see, shaky ground, because I still think there's time, right? I think Minnesota could be on shaky ground, right? If you're Chris Finch.
Yeah.
I think that, Washington obviously on shaky ground.
Is Billups?
I don't think Dallas is on shaky ground, but I
maybe should be.
But I can be convinced otherwise. Yeah, I could be convinced otherwise for sure. So
yeah, I mean,
there's not a lot.
There's not a lot. There's a lot of there's more coaching stability than you'd think, and it's funny how three of the guys that were let go have been to the finals in the last 4 years,
right?
Which is pretty crazy. But let's transition to Heat talk, because that's what the people are here for. Just
wait, you mean they're not here for potential Washington Wizards GM hires?
They want to know where Frank Vogel's going, George. They need to know where Vogel's going. They want to know.
I like Frank Vogel.
I like Frank. Listen, I think that's funny enough. I think that series is the best series I've ever seen Spo coach, and I thought Vogel was right there with him.
Vogel coached a great series.
Vogel
100%.
was awesome in that series, and Spo is Spo, and we all have infinite respect for him. But I thought Vogel went blow for blow. Spo with
Vogel is a really good coach. I think the problem with Vogel is, or not with Vogel. I think the problem in LA was that I don't think he felt like at the end he had the ability to do. Like, I don't think anyone was going to stand there with him that first year with the Russ stuff and be like, yeah, Frank, we got your back, because they clearly didn't based on his contract status. Yeah. So I think he, even despite that, he still sat and benched Russ and did things that everyone that was watching said they should do. And it just didn't work out. They had a miserable season, but I don't think much of that was Frank's fault personally. But whatever, let's talk Heat.
Yeah,
let's go.
chat's actually shocked that you picked the Celtics over the Sixers, and they're wondering if you need to change your Sixers jersey into a Celtics jersey.
You
guys are too many people. Chat brought it up, not me.
You mother bleepers started this thing 7 years ago or 6 years ago, whatever it's been. And I always get a random, you know what happens now when a random person, when I tweet something nice about the Heat, says something about the Sixers? You know what I do now?
I
just block them. That's it. You don't even get the benefit of the doubt. Monsters. I used to mute them. And then I'm like, you know what? Now you don't. You know what? You're going to be a pain in the ass. Now you're not even going to see what I type.
George, that's the longevity of this show. This is our 10th year doing it. That's longevity, baby.
Yeah, that's a testament to you guys and how much of a pain in the ass you are.
We've been annoying for 10 years, baby.
Yeah.
All right, Heat-Knicks, George. Jimmy Butler, I think it was Barry Jackson said there's optimism that Jimmy Butler will return Game 3 if the smile and nod meant anything. It meant you mother bleepers are in trouble, as he waved goodbye to the Garden. He did walk in Game 3. He walked in Game 2 with slippers, which made me feel good for the ankle. He walked in with slippers, and I was like, that has to be a good sign. I kind of feel like they were cautious with him, given kind of his history with the ankles, and they'll be careful. We know the Heat are very careful with their guys. The energy feels, George, that he's gonna play, and that he wants to play, and that they want him to play if he's ready, especially with almost a week off, or really. So, you hearing anything? You feeling anything?
Well, I'm not hearing anything, but I feel like I think he's going to play. If you're just asking me to recklessly speculate,
yes,
I would probably be surprised if he didn't play. That would make me think that the injury is more severe than we thought. Now, when the writers in the locker room after Game 1 said it looked like a baseball, I mean, I believe it, But after 7 days, can it look more like, I don't know, a ping pong ball?
Yeah.
Can he make it something that it's manageable and palatable for him to play? And I think, considering they have probably been giving him, not probably, I know they've been giving him round the clock treatment. And he's also a bit of a crazy person, as we both know.
A bit.
I would guess that he's probably going to do everything in his power to play Game 3. And I still feel fairly confident in my Heat and 6 prediction from the beginning.
George, I was so proud of you when you picked Heat and 6. I was like, we're so back, baby. We got Sedano back.
Well, I picked the Bucks because who didn't pick the Bucks?
I picked the Bucks. We all picked the Bucks.
Right.
Yeah,
no one anticipated Giannis to miss, 2 games plus, And by the way, even if he would have played, I still think, in retrospect, we all would have been wrong. They might have still won the series. I mean, we don't know that for sure, but they were kicking their tail when he was in there too. So
they were certainly playing good enough to win under it, and they were up when he played the game one. And I mean, they
were plus 16 for 100 possessions, right? When he was on the floor.
George, they're plus 12 net rating when Jimmy's off the court.
Crazy.
It's insane.
Right? Gabe Vincent. This was a dude that, I mean, obviously we saw him play in a big way last year. And then this year had basically a miserable season, right? And I would say a lot of guys had a miserable season.
All the role guys just had statistical regression across the board.
Right. They all looked basically. I watched you guys on Twitter all year, and you guys went from being like, oh, they'll figure it out, it'll regress to the mean or ascend to the mean, to eventually like, I knew these guys were G League guys for a reason.
Twitter turned on them so fast. Everyone was fed up, dude. And I think it's so funny when like they get a national TV game and, Mark Jones or, somebody who, beloved will be like, in Miami with all these undrafted, you have to applaud them. And the fan base is like, are you trolling us, Mark Jones?
How dare you, Mark Jones?
How dare you?
What do you know? Just because you used to be on Whammy in Miami doing Heat games back in the 90s. What do you know?
He's a lifer, man.
But yes, you're right. It turned very quickly.
Just so quickly.
But you look, Gabe Vincent. I mean, I saw Barry Jackson's story today in the Miami Herald where he thinks Gabe Vincent's going to get paid again. And that might be the case. But ultimately, this team, man, it's just, one of the things I got during the season from somebody, right, was just like, they're just bored. And I was like, that was like probably like in January. And I'm like, okay, I can get that in January. And then I'm just like, I kind of went to the place everybody else did, which is, I just don't know how good they are.
I was there, man. I was there.
Yeah. But here's what it says. Okay. And this part is not great for the league, which is probably why they're doing this midseason tournament, right? That if you look at it, teams like the Heat, like the Lakers, who we were just talking about, they weren't great during the regular season, but right now you're looking at, the Final Four, right, in each side, and they're there. You know what I'm saying? Like, it just is what it is. And I think teams are just using the regular season to kind of try some stuff out, work through some lineups, build some habits, at least in theory, and just be ready for the playoffs, right? Because it's become a battle of attrition. Basketball has become a lot like the NFL in a lot of ways, because the NFL, a lot of it has been over the years a battle of attrition, who's healthy and who gets hot at the right time. And if you really look at the NBA most recently, the last couple of years, it's been kind of similar if you think about it. And this year, on top of it all, there's a lot of parity. Now, you can make the case that it's not parity, that it's just not good basketball. At least during the regular season, I feel like that might have been a valid argument. But now when you look at the postseason and the way those teams are playing, maybe it just is parity. At the beginning of the year, Johnny, I kept saying, if you look at the NBA for the first time in 20 years, maybe more, that the East was the better conference, right? At least the power was at the top. And also, for the first time in maybe about 20-something years, you can make the case that every team, even the bad ones, okay, had a guy or two that could snatch a win from you at any given moment, right? Orlando, they beat, how many times they beat Boston this year? 2-3 times?
Oh, yeah, no,
I mean, it just, and every team had that. We were talking about that with OKC all year until we saw like, oh yeah, they're actually not bad. They're pretty good.
Detroit has
and they're
guys
really good moving forward. So that's just where the NBA is. If it was a perfect world, right? I think the NBA plays 66 games during the regular season. They do their midseason tournament, and we're good to go. No more back-to-backs. We space this thing out properly. I just don't think the owners would ever go for it. But ultimately, that's why we're here, is that experience matters. And you're seeing that now with the Heat, right? You're seeing that now with a team like the Lakers, right? You see it with a team like the Golden State Warriors, who are a 6 seed. Right? That's what you're seeing at the moment, is that these experienced teams, particularly teams that have recent experience of success, they're just like, you know what? If you get us in the tournament, we'll be fine. And Spo was saying that bleep all season, and nobody bought it. And you know what? He was right.
He was right, dude. We were like, stop it. I mean, it's him saying that and Bam saying I need to be better after every game. We were sick of it. We were just sick of it. George, let's talk a little bit more about this series in depth. I think it's been pretty interesting how kind of it swayed a little back and forth. So in game one, Miami tried something interesting, which was putting their smalls in drop. They weren't letting Jalen Brunson kind of get favorable switches. They would drop Duncan Robinson and let, whoever was guarding the pick and roll handler kind of a little bit time to get over. Discombobulated them a little bit. Randle comes back for game 2. They have to change up their coverage a little bit. They load up heavy on his side of the ball. And the Knicks kind of countered them leaving guys open with telling Josh Hart, all right, when you're open at the corner, you're not going to shoot. You're just going to drive as hard as you can on the baseline, force a rotation, make the pass, or go up for a basket. And I thought they respected Randle shooting a little bit too much. There's a lot of film on like Bam playing really, really close up to him, who's not been a great three-point shooter this year, giving them blow-bys and really, creating rotation, which I think is where the Heat have mostly struggled in their defense this year. They went to a zone, George. I did not like it. They could not rebound in it consistently, even though in game 1 I thought they kind of controlled that part of the game. Is there anything that you've kind of seen from either side that you're thinking that's kind of interesting going to game 3? Because I think those have been the really big cards that have been played by both coaching staffs. And I think game 3, if Jimmy plays, we're going to see a look at kind of how everybody looks healthy.
I think they've done a great job on Jalen Brunson for the most part. I know he got loose late in the game in the second half in the last game. But again, you're doing that without Jimmy Butler. You know what I'm saying? So like eventually he was going to get loose. But I'm with you on Randle. I think that they are giving him way too much respect. I know that Barkley said after the game that Julius sees that team and he doesn't respect anybody on the other side. I just think that Bam is giving him way too much credit. And I think that
I agree.
There's not a guy in this league I don't think Bam can cover. I'm just being honest with you. So I know people may think that's a homer thing, but I think he's the most versatile
I think Jokic
guy.
is the only guy that I haven't seen it with him.
Right. That's a good one.
We're talking like transcendent offensive all-time talent there.
Correct. And I guess, because look, I guess AD has given him problems over the years too, right? But I still feel like Bam in a series could probably work through some of that potentially.
Yeah, absolutely.
But Jokic's combination of size and the passing ability is unlike
shooting.
anything we've really seen. So I think that's the part with Jokic that gets you is just, even if you've done the right thing defensively, he still can pinpoint a pass somewhere over his head that you're not going to see coming, and that's it. He's going to hit the guy right in the shooting pocket, and it's over. So it just is what it is with him. There are obviously a couple of outliers there, but I don't think Randle is one of those guys. Okay, so let's just say it like that. Even though I do think Julius Randle has come a long way from early in his career to what he is now, I still think that he can be mistake prone and turnover prone, particularly. So I think you can force him into some of that. I think if you mix some stuff up at him, I think you can do that. But I think they've made the determination, Johnny, that the head of the snake is Jalen Brunson.
Yeah.
And if they control that, they're willing to live with everything else. Because you know what? If RJ Barrett is going to beat you hitting threes, so be it. If Julius Randle is going to beat you hitting shots from the outside, so be it, right? Just you don't want those guys getting into the paint. And if you really watch the Knicks, their offense is not really that complicated, okay?
Not.
Their offense is basically one of those three guys I just mentioned, breaking the defense down, either getting to the cup or collapsing the defense and kicking it out to a shooter. That's it. That's what their defense is. And because of that, it's why I feel like Spo will be able to handle whatever whatever comes across on the floor, because that's generally what they're going to do. So, I just think the bigger thing for the Heat is, and I think they learned this in the second half of game 1, just because the three is there doesn't mean you have to take it, right? Find yourself the best shot you can get. And it may not always be a three. Okay, they want you to take those threes, particularly much like Milwaukee, right? They want you to take those over the break, above the break threes, right? So, but the Knicks do a better job. Well, I don't know about that. I guess the Knicks give you some of the mid-range stuff that Milwaukee does, maybe not as much. Milwaukee
they play a little bit. They play higher up on the screen,
right.
So
right, correct. So it's a little different in that regard, but they'll give you threes just like Milwaukee's going to give you threes. But it doesn't mean you have to take them every time. So I just think if Miami, I'm going to use a Spoism, plays to their identity and moves the ball,
that's a classic.
Like we saw, because think about it, what they did in game 2, I mean, that was a thing of beauty, moving the ball in that game. So add Jimmy Butler into that equation, who, when he knows in this series, he knows he's not going to have to get 50 every night, right? Like this isn't Milwaukee. The Knicks are going to throw things at him that Milwaukee didn't. right? So that means the ball's going to have to move more. So I still feel like the ball movement is going to be able to beat the Knicks defense more times than not and get them good enough looks at the basket. I think over 2 games, Miami's gotten great looks. Like, I don't think that that's been an issue. And I'm a big believer. I know people are going to roll their eyes, but I know people can say a lot about Mike D'Antoni, but Mike D'Antoni's theory of the ball gains energy and moves faster than the defense is real.
That's real.
Right.
That's like,
and it's what Spo used a lot of when the big 3 was there. Right. And it's why when they won that first championship, one of the calls Spo made first was to Mike D'Antoni to let him know, hey, your system worked. Forget about what all these idiots tell you. This worked. So I think Spo, you look at it historically, everyone just assumes he takes from Riley because he's been at the foot of Riley or the knee of Riley for so long. And yes, but you look at Spo's taking stuff from a bunch of other coaches.
Like freaking Kelly, like all across
right,
sports.
Chip Kelly, Urban Meyer, right? He takes football stuff, right? And like makes it into basketball plays. Like, so yeah, I just think that to me, this series, as long as Jimmy has relative health, is not that close, barring something else. Like, I guess an injury to Bam obviously would be considered catastrophic.
And he's already playing a little bit, hamstrung.
Right, he's got the hamstring thing.
Yeah.
But as long as those 2 guys have relative health, I feel like the Heat are going to win this series fairly comfortably.
George, I previewed the series with Nikias, and the thing we talked about was the Knicks have a really good offense and an ant defense throughout the regular season. Their offense, really, their shot profile is not very good. They don't make a lot of threes. They don't take a lot of threes. But what they do really well is they get a ton of free throws on the offensive rebound, and they take care of the ball. And if you're Miami, as long as you take care of the ball, which they have this series, and you prevent them from offensive rebounding, and you keep them off the line, which Miami throughout the regular season has been very good at not fouling. Odd for a SPO team, but, they didn't foul a lot this year. You force the Knicks to actually play basketball, and you give yourself a great chance to win. Like, you can't let them, get feed off turnovers and offensive rebound and do like nonsense. If you make them play like real half-court basketball, I think you kind of see where the series kind of comes together. And I think where they miss Jimmy more than anything, George, is on defense, because when his help at the nail, he's the first guy to stunt in on any drive. And New York in game 2 got a lot more action downhill because now that stunt man isn't Jimmy. It's either Max or a smaller guy or Duncan or whoever's at that position. And they had to run zone because it just wasn't working. And that kind of give whoever the corner guy is, whether it's Kevin Love or Caleb Martin, whoever, a little bit extra time to kind of rotate in, kind of let the guy behind the screen kind of recover a little bit. It just makes everything work in their defense. So that was, to me, the obvious part where they missed him, as well as, he killed him off ball in game 1.
Yeah,
it was crazy. It was a clinic of off ball movement.
To your point, for sure, 100%. To your point, his defense at the nail. And by the way, I love the fact that you used the nail like that. That you are a basketball person.
That's how you were, basketball, baby.
Do you know that there was originally a real nail in the middle of the free throw line? Did you know
really?
That?
Is that why they call it the nail?
Yeah, that's why
so
it's
cool.
called that.
I didn't know that.
Because basically here's a little trivia for you.
Inside basketball.
Or not trivia, but just history. So in the middle of the free throw line, they had the nail, right? And it would measure the distance from that point, 15 feet from there to the rim, right? And then, the distance to the edges of the key, right? Which was 8 feet. So that's why it was called the nail, because there was a legit nail in the middle so they could use it to measure the rest of it.
I love knowing that because
But he does play free safety from the nail very well. Yes,
that's like his best defensive position, more than on ball, I think.
Yeah.
But yeah, I thought they missed him, and their defense kind of doesn't work without that element.
100%. Yeah. They're not the same defense, although they held their own, I thought, in game 2. So I like them winning those 2 games in Miami.
I like the confidence, George. I like it because I got to be honest with you. I'm talking so much shit on Twitter, and I'm not the most confident person in the world. Just because I figure the shooting will come crashing down on them at some point, even though my basketball brain tells me this series looks kind of done, especially after their role guys almost beat their full team.
Right.
But, it just takes one bad shooting night at home to give the Knicks a little bit of life. I'm glad that listen, chat's making fun of me. I don't have anything. I'm a little scared.
Yeah, I'm not. I'm with. Look, after watching the first game, I text a Knicks fan buddy of mine, and I said, if Jimmy's relatively healthy, this thing is a wrap. And he was trying to make excuses about Randle and this and that and blah, blah, blah. And I'm just like, nah, bro, talk yourself into it all you want. Like, this series is a wrap. And then I watched game 2, to your point. I'm like, dude, they were one bad call away. Like the rim, the ball hitting. We haven't even talked about this. The ball hitting the rim, and that's just a terrible rule. The fact that you
can't
I know
challenge.
it's not under 2 minutes, right? Like, and you can't challenge it, and you can't take a timeout there because you don't have the ball, right? Like, it's a weird thing, and I know it, but the refs should be allowed to go and just say, hey, let's take a look at it real quick. There should be at least a couple of moments, like, you know, like the coaches have challenges, that the refs have their own version of a challenge.
George, they do it. They took away Max's 3 in game 7 off one of those reviews that you're talking.
In the timeout, go back and watch it.
But George, the thing with that call, and it's similar to like the call that the foul, quote unquote, that Middleton did to Lowry off the steal, that those calls, you can reverse them. But when you make the call, you kill the flow of the game, as to which Gabe got a layup, which obviously you call the play dead. So, you know, you can't count those 2 points for Miami. You may get the ball back, but you don't get to count the 2 points. And then, you know, just like the Lowry thing, you know, you get fouled. You know, they call a foul the other way. They review it. Then you have to jump it up when really Miami should have. So it's kind of, and listen, the referees have a tough job. I did not want to do the Scott Foster show. It's been done plenty.
No. And I'm not blaming just Scott Foster.
No, I know. It's just the rules.
You know what I mean?
They should. I would like if they expanded instead of review. I think like out of bounds calls for sure. The last 2 minutes. I think goaltend and shot clock violations. The last 5 minutes. Because that doesn't happen enough.
100%.
Yeah.
Yes. I'm with you 100%. And that something like that, it doesn't happen that often, but it happens at least once. I think once every playoffs, it happens where you wonder, did that actually hit the rim? Did it not? You know, like at least one time during a playoff season, that happens, if not more than once. So I would like for that to be expanded at least to 5 minutes or the fourth quarter or whatever. You know what I mean? Like, because imagine this. Let's say that shot would have counted by Gabe, and you had Julius Randle stepping over the baseline,
get the ball
and
back.
Then Duncan hits that 3. Then it's a 1-point game and you're playing the foul game. You know, like, so
you don't have to go for that steal on the other end that they wasted like 12 seconds.
Right, where they wasted 10 or 12 seconds. Right. So ultimately, I'm with you. Game 1, I felt confident after game 1, even with Jimmy's injury. Then watch game 2, and I'm like, I'm not worried. Miami's taking 2 in Miami, and then they'll lose game 5 in New York and give New York some hope. And then Miami will wrap this thing up in 6.
George Sedano has the guts. George, I was at the game. I was at game 1 with Ryan Cortez. We were maximum annoying. Knick fans were leaving early. It was a beautiful sight. They were walking out of the arena with almost 3 minutes on the clock left. Those people gave up on their city. There was no one dancing at Penn Station. There was no happiness. I was wondering what had happened. They all had that bravado. George, I feel like people now, the fans aren't buying into the rivalry, obviously, like they used to. I mean, I grew up listening to you and Levitard hate the Knicks on the radio. That was adopted by me. But now we have these Zoomers that don't know what it's like. They don't hate anybody. They get
they only have one series. They have LeBron and Wade and Bosh beating them in 5 games, and
when they
me making fun of them because the one game they won in the gentleman's sweep, they had streamers coming down from the rafters. I'm like, what is happening here? I remember being in that arena that day, going like, really? It's 3-1. Like, George, what is happening?
Do you remember when Rudy Gay hit the buzzer beater in a regular season game against the Big Three Heat the first year, and they threw confetti in Memphis?
Yeah,
that was a crazy
time. First year, I could do a whole book on just that first season.
I'm sure that there will be stuff. I'm sure. Yeah. I'm still waiting for the Chris Bosh documentary.
Chris Bosh, actually, it's funny you mentioned Memphis. I remember Chris Bosh telling me this story. I think this was for Dwayne's. I wrote a piece on Dwayne's retirement for ESPN.com a couple years ago. And I talked to Chris. We were talking about that era. And he was laughing, man. He was like, man, that first year was brutal. He's like, we got it everywhere. And I'm like, oh, yeah, I know. I was on the road with you guys. He's like, I know, but we got it in places like Memphis and Utah. And I was like, we were never coming here. Like, what are you guys so mad about? It was funny.
George, it was so bad. And I'll ask you one last question, and I'll get you out of here, because there's been a lot of talk on Twitter whether Jimmy is the the second greatest Heat player. Not most talented. Obviously, like LeBron and Shaq are the two best
LeBron is
players.
the most talented.
Yeah,
yes.
LeBron and Shaq are the two guys.
I
right?
saw Alf's tweet.
Yeah. Okay, I'm referencing Alf's tweet.
Yeah.
I'm not there yet. I still have LeBron. I don't think it's a crazy discussion. I kind of wanted to know what you've seen the history of this franchise, unlike few people have. I don't think it's that ridiculous to say. I think it's closer than people think.
It's closer than people think, but I still think it's LeBron. I mean, the guy won you 2 championships. The guy was the MVP in those years. He was the finals MVP. He was clearly the best player on the planet. I think what Jimmy has done is remarkable. And I think what's happening there, and maybe it's subconscious, is that you didn't think that this would be the results when you got him.
No.
Like, you thought you'd be competitive and you thought you'd be in the thick of it, but you didn't think you'd be potentially championship relevant on a regular basis. You know what I mean?
Another guy.
Right. And I think that that's what's playing into this, that he's exceeding your expectations. So because of that, you're kind of adding points to his total, like on his side of the ledger. Look, Dwayne Wade is the Miami Heat. He's the star that everyone loves and will always love, still loves, was in New York, has been in Miami for the playoff games. He's a part owner of another team, for God's sake.
And he lives across the country.
He lives 45 minutes from me.
That's a humble brag.
Yeah.
That's a nice
neighborhood. I mean, he lives a little further up the coast, on the northern side of the coast of LA. I live on the southern part of the coast of LA. But and it's also really not 45 minutes. It was be like 45 minutes if there was no traffic, which, let's face it, that never happened.
Listen, just
honestly,
pretend
it's like 90 minutes.
But okay, for argument's sake, 40 for clout's sake.
Yeah, not that Dwayne would ever invite me over for wine and spritzers, but if he invited me to it would take me easily 90 minutes to get.
It's feasible. It's feasible.
But I'd be like, bro, I might as well. I'm like,
now you accept that invite, George.
Let me tell you, I would, of course, I would. But it's funny. The last time I saw him was the day LeBron broke the record. I was at the arena. He was there. I was actually on the phone. I don't remember who I was on the phone with, but I was in the tunnel where the players come through, and then he was walking through, and I just hung up on whoever was talking. I was like, hey, I gotta go, bro. And then I just came in, brought it in, gave him a hug, and we talked for a couple seconds, and then I had to go and he had to go because that person was calling me back. Like, why did you just hang up on me? But yes, I would take him up for it. But 90 minutes, I legitimately have friends that live sort of in the same area where he lives, and I haven't seen them in 6 years. Okay. So that's just the way this town works. If you live that far, it's tough.
George,
I gotta be honest.
I don't cross the county line. Alf wants me to hang out with him, and he lives God knows where, up there north. He's like Stugotz. He moves closer and closer to Jacksonville every time I ask. I'm in South Miami. I'm not doing that.
Yeah. But to answer your question, Dwayne Wade is the one everyone loves, and understandably so, is the most important player in franchise history. LeBron does not come there if it's not for him, and obviously his impeccable top 75 player of all time, Hall of Fame, all that stuff. Right? You've got all that. And then, which, by the way, man, I have a vacation planned 2 days after his induction. And I'm like, do I fly across the country for this thing and then have to fly back across the country in one day? I don't know. My wife may kill me, but we'll see. But LeBron is still number 2. Jimmy's getting there. He's number 3. He's past Shaq.
Do you think with a ring? Yeah, I thought I think the Shaq.
Even with a ring, he's past. Even though Shaq has a ring, he's past Shaq.
I'm saying, do you think with a ring he passes LeBron? Let's say he gets through the Knicks, then gets through the Celtics, Boston, and then gets through the Warriors or the Lakers.
Or the Lakers.
That's
right?
that's like a murderer's
row.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's a real discussion. I'll give you that.
Listen. I hope.
I mean, LeBron beating the Spurs. I mean, I know Ray Allen played a big role in that, but let's not forget LeBron was definitely the best player on the floor in that series.
And I think we can dock them both for the Dallas series and that second Bucks series. So we'll call it push.
Yeah, but if he wins one, it's definitely close. I still think it's LeBron though.
I'm just happy that the city has embraced Jimmy, because I think during the bubble, George, obviously COVID had changed everyone's lives here, but once things started to kind of open up again, I just saw no buzz about the team when they were playing well. And this is really the first. I don't know. It's just nice to see like people care again.
It's funny. It's the same thing here in LA. Like I think people are like there's an excitement level that I haven't seen here since before I lived here, when I would come here to cover games in the playoffs, you know, during like Kobe, you know what I mean? Like where it's like people are genuinely like fired up. Like they were giving Dylan Brooks all sorts of bleep during those games. And it's like, that's what you live for. You know, when you come to playoff games, you want the fans to get on guys. You want the excitement of their home team, regardless of what building you're in. Like, look, say what you want about the Knicks. That's a fun place to watch a game. Okay. Like, you know, I know that you were there and their fans left early, but you have to admit that is a fun place to watch a game in Madison Square Garden.
No, George, it was my first time actually in a visiting arena ever. So that was such a, I'm glad.
That's a good first place.
It was a great experience.
Let me tell you, there's not a lot of other places that are going to live up to that. So
No.
I'm just warning you.
Listen, I know that we call it a dump, and I don't know if you saw, but a possum checked my ticket when I was coming in. It was
I saw
huge.
you tweet that.
Yeah, it was enormous. I couldn't believe it. And it talked and everything. They're very advanced at this point. But no, it was great. And being there with Cortez as we trolled was fantastic. George, thank you so much for joining us on your day off. We appreciate it. The city loves you, even though we give you all sorts of shit. You're the best man. Do you have anything?
Right, pal.
Do you have anything to plug coming up? Classic radio plug.
Oh, I'll be on sidelines somewhere in the second round next week on TV, and then I'll be on ESPN radio doing the Western Conference Finals. So
okay, well, guys, remember you got pre-gaming and hangover time on game day. I will be at the Kentucky Derby because I planned this trip before I thought the Heat would make the second round. So no me this weekend. You'll get me back next week. You got Alf and Brass holding it down over the weekend. And I'll see you guys for Game 4 of Heat-Knicks here in Miami. And enjoy.